My name is Jonathan Priest. I work on the MA. I'm going to be taking over as head of the course from September 2021. My background is as a circus performer, a circus researcher, I would say. I've been a teacher for many years, both here and also in the Swedish School Dock in Stockholm, where I taught for many years. I have a PhD in artistic research with a specificity in circus through the Stockholm University of the Arts, and I'm involved in running several of the modules on the course here within MA in directing circus. I'm going to, if I can talk a little bit about what the course covers here. There are 5 modules. So the first module you'll encounter is a context and research methodologies module, which basically asks the question of what specific area in relation to circus directing are you interested in pursuing, and introduces you to some artistic research tools that might help you to further investigate what your interest is. I think the tools that we use from artistic research are particularly useful in regard to this, because this is also not, because circus is a very broad discipline. We accept people from all different aspects, all different ideas about what circus could be, or what elements of circus you're interested in utilizing or developing or researching. So I think we're very interested in hearing your take on this, and that module is designed to give you tools to be able to further your own interest, whatever that might be in the field of directing circus. There's also a context element which introduces you to some contextual background on circus history and the history of theatre and physical theatre and other kind of disciplines, and how those disciplines have understood themselves over the course of the last 150 years or so, which relates to how they've researched themselves as well, I suppose. Another module that we do is called Performer as Source, and here there's a kind of two-handed approach. So there's performer as source and there's director as author. So both of those things suggest a slightly different approach to directing. There are more than two, obviously, but within we consider one end of that to be utilizing the source material as your directorial clay, and the other end of that spectrum is you coming as a director with your own vision, which you're going to try to make happen through the activity and practice of circus. So within that spectrum there is a wide range of things which are possible for you to pursue. So those two modules are performer as source and director as author, and they have slightly different focuses. Currently, at the moment, the MAs are working on the Performer as Source module, and they are directing the first year BA students here and making an end-of-year show with them. So that's very much using the students' own material and formulating it into a cohesive whole, if you like. The other modules that we teach are Professional Collaboration, which encourages you to take up a placement with a professional working circus company to look at their own negotiations with the financial field, with the cultural field, and also finding ways for you to investigate your own interests, which you may have been researching already in the research module, and how you might grow that by contact with those in the professional field. So it's very much an investigation of how others do things, but in relation to how you might want to do things going forward. The last module out of the 5 is the final major project, which is a chance for you to speak to the world, to invite an audience in and to show them what kind of circus director you're going to be. So that's very much a project that's driven by you, organised by you, and we have a cohort of alumni who are willing to put themselves forward as bodies for your own experimentation. So essentially, those 5 modules taken together hopefully form some kind of meaningful journey for you through which you will be able to determine early on kind of what your focus and interest might be in relation to this wide practice of directing circus. And each of the modules is designed to help you to deepen that approach and deepen your understanding of your own work and how it might relate to the waiting audience and the waiting industry. In terms of, how the course is reaching out into the field itself, into the industry of circus, I mean, more and more circus is looking for a way to reach the public. I mean, one of the big questions is, what kind of an art form is circus? Should it even be one? That's another question. On what terms should it become an art form and speak to a public? Should it be able to speak about any issue? Should it be able to only speak about the things that are inherent within its own practice? What are the aesthetics of circus? What are the technical abilities, possibilities, potentialities of circus? What are the discursive registers upon which circus is founded? And I think that the course tends to look into these things. It looks into the technical aspect, the aesthetic aspect. What's the technical object? What is the aesthetic subject? And what are the discursive limits that regulate and inform how the technical and the aesthetic speak to each other? In terms of it being relevant to the field itself, schools are turning out artists who want to speak to the public all the time. Some of those artists are self-authoring, they'll make their own work. Sometimes companies might form who need a guiding hand, a kind of guide on the side, if you like, somebody who might be able to be dramaturgically useful in their production, to look at their processes and their practice and their product and help them to shape it so that it best meets the audience that they intend to reach. I think that's one thing that's very useful. I think there's also the possibility that you might want to not just be a director who's external to the practice, you might be a practitioner yourself and want to better make work that maybe includes you as well. So I think in terms of how it's relevant to the field, I think there's a feeding in of a kind of outside eye position which might be useful for circus to be more self-reflective, and I think to determine what kind of work it's trying to make and what kind of audiences it's trying to reach and also what it's trying to say. I think very much as an artist who wants to still be a circus practitioner and director and maker, creator of work, I think it's only going to deepen your own practice, and therefore the work that you make that feeds that waiting field is going to be of a higher quality, because you will have learned some reflective tools and reflective abilities and better to be able to establish and determine what you yourself are trying to put out there. What makes this course different? What makes Circomedia unique as a site to come and study at? I think is an interesting question, in the sense that I think very much there's a tendency to take the technical register of circus, its physicality, and there's a tendency to look at different aesthetic forms through which that technicality might express itself. So what you get is this kind of game of like an exquisite corpse, whereby you're combining technical with aesthetic, with kind of endless possibilities. So you can combine, let's say you could do trapeze in the style of burlesque, you could do a hoop act as a grotesque piece, you could make a juggling act into a clown piece, and so there's this kind of recombinant possibility that circus has in these two dimensions, and I think that's perfectly fine. It can go on forever. It's a kind of endless flat plane of things being combined with other things, and I think what we do at Circomedia is we try to add that third discursive dimension, to think about what are the discourses that inform that aesthetic register, which is in turn being combined with the technicalities of circus. So I think there's definitely a deepening of thought that's happening here as we investigate these aesthetic registers in relation to circus physicality. not just in a two-dimensional way, but we try to pull out that third dimension and think about what's actually being said here, what underlies the aesthetics, what kind of subject are we looking at, what can that subject do, how can we challenge the way that subject appears, etc., etc. In terms of coming here and studying in Bristol, I think there is quite a lively circus scene here, and the space itself is organised around being open to those who are alumni and those who have maybe finished the course already and are coming here to make work. So there are kind of mini residencies, there are people coming here to train, there are lots of courses and classes, and also youth circus. So I would say the big draw, if you were coming here to study directing circus, would be you are kind of coming to a city where there's already quite a lively circus scene, and there are bodies hanging around everywhere, making various experiments in various different kind of dimensions and registers and approaches, or making work for the industry, also making their own research practice to deepen their own practice. Some are just coming here to train. So I think in terms of that, Bristol is an interesting cultural site for many reasons. It has links with different positive and negative sides of its own history, so I think it's an interesting place to be at the moment. Yeah, I mean, I think what I'd like to say is you're very welcome. You know, the thing is, we want people to come here and try things out. It's a space very much to research. It's an academic degree, but it's also a research. So there are certain marks that we have to hit, and we expect you to hit those marks because it's a master's after all. So we will be pushing you and poking you to be rigorous in your thinking and your experimentation in the studio space. Why are you doing this? What's it for? Who's it for? What's it supposed to mean? Etc., etc. Those things are important. But we want you to come with fresh ideas and try things out which perhaps other places might think are ridiculous or impossible. I mean, that's partly a transposition of circus thinking into the way we run the course anyway. I mean, circus is all about self-imposed restrictions, so we're looking for research questions and approaches to directing this form of circus, which is largely underdetermined. We're looking for difficult ideas and trying to make them happen. And I think that's what we're welcoming. I think people who are coming here and want to try something new. That's it, really.